Cannot we live in peace? Oh, okay, I will work. I will work. I will do the best I can. Yes. If that is what you want, do not hurt me. This is hard work. Cannot we live in peace? If that is what you want, I will obey. Can I have some shoes? Can I have some shoes? Our work is complete. I will work. I will do what I must. I'm just a peasant. I will work. I am finished with the building. I will work. This hammer is heavy. What do you want with me? Cannot we live in peace? Building construction has been completed. Building construction has been completed. That is what you want. Oh, okay, I will work. I will work. This is hard work. Do not hurt me. Can I have some shoes? I will go. I will obey. Work is complete. Building construction has been completed. I will work. I'm hungry. I will work. I will work. Cannot we live in peace? I will work. I will work. If that is what you want, I'm just a peasant with the building. I am finished with the building. I will work. I will do the best I can. I'm hungry. This hammer is heavy. Cannot we live in peace? This is hard work. Okay, I will work. I will do what I must. Yes, I will go. I will work. This hammer is heavy. Cannot we live in peace? I will work. Are there not better tools? I will work.
A new camo netting has arrived.
Okay, I will work.
Be on watch for the enemy.
I will try to hurry. I'm just a peasant.
Be on watch for the enemy.
This hammer is heavy.
Be on watch for the enemy.
Our work is complete.
Be on watch for
There's
the
not
enemy.
enough room for that building.
Be on watch for the enemy.
This is hard work.
Be on
I'm
watch for
hungry.
the enemy.
Are there not better
Be on watch
tools?
for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy.
Oh, okay, I
Be
will
on watch
work.
for the enemy.
Building construction, I
Be on
will
watch
try
for
to
the
hurry.
enemy.
I'm just a peasant.
Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch
Building
for the enemy.
construction has been completed. Building construction
Be
has
on
been
watch
completed.
for the enemy. Be on watch for
Our
the
work
enemy.
is
Yourself. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on
Building
watch for the
construction
enemy.
has been completed.
Be on watch for the enemy.
Building construction
Be on
has
watch
been
for the enemy.
completed.
Be on watch for the enemy.
I am finished
Be
with
on
the
watch for
building.
the enemy.
Building
Be on watch
construction
for
has
the
been
enemy.
completed. Building
Be on
construction
watch
has
for
been
the enemy.
completed.
Be on watch for the
I will
enemy.
do the best I can.
Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. The tunnels will protect us. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy.
I will work.
A new camo netting has arrived. Be on watch for the enemy. Land must be preserved. Be on watch for the enemy. Guarding the GLA underground.
A warrior has fallen.
Our land must be preserved. I sense danger near. Our land must be preserved. Guarding the GLA underground. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Ready yourself.
Upgrade complete.
What's the job? The new camo netting has arrived. Be on watch for the enemy. I will be
Well done, General. You have reached a higher rank.
Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Netting has arrived. The new camo netting has arrived. Be on watch for the enemy. The new camo netting has arrived. Be on watch for the enemy.
A warrior has fallen.
being attacked!
Well done, General. You have reached a higher rank.
Be on watch for the enemy! Be on watch for the enemy!
What do you want with me?
Be on watch for the enemy!
Thank you for the new shoes.
Be on watch for the enemy! Be on watch for the enemy!
Well done, General. You have reached a higher
Camo
rank.
netting has arrived! Be on watch for the enemy! Be on watch for the enemy!
Quad gunner.
Be on watch for the enemy! Be on watch for the enemy! Be on watch for the enemy! Our homes are in peril! Be on watch for the enemy!
I'm hungry. I can't build there.
Be on watch for the enemy! Be on watch for the enemy! Be on watch for the enemy! Be on watch for the enemy!
A warrior has fallen.
General! Our land is being attacked! Be on watch for the enemy!
I'm hungry. Cannot you live in peace?
Be on watch for the enemy!
Oh, okay, I will work.
Be on watch for the enemy! 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 Our base is under attack! Be on watch for the enemy! Be on watch
Our
for
work
the
is
enemy!
complete.
Be on watch for the enemy! 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 Be on watch for
A
the enemy!
warrior has fallen.
Be on watch for the enemy! Be on watch for the enemy!
Our Sharman tower has been sealed.
Be on watch for the enemy! Be on watch for the enemy! The enemy!
No one escapes.
Be on watch for the enemy! Be on watch for the enemy! Be on watch for the enemy! Be
A
on watch for
warrior
the
has
enemy!
fallen.
Be on watch for the enemy! Be on watch for the enemy! Be on watch for the enemy! Our homes are in peril!
A warrior has fallen.
Be on watch for the enemy! Be on watch for the enemy! Be on watch for the enemy!
I will obey.
Be on watch for
You
the enemy!
change your mind.
We have discovered
often.
an enemy black lotus.
That is what
Be
you
on watch
want.
for the enemy! Be on watch for the enemy! Be on watch for the enemy!
We have 80 rockets
For the
now.
enemy! Be on watch for the 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 enemy! Be on watch for
A
the
warrior
enemy!
has fallen.
Be on watch for the enemy! 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 Be on
We
watch
have discovered an enemy black lotus. A warrior has fallen.
Be on watch for the enemy! Be on watch for the enemy! Be on watch for the enemy! Our base is in peril!
I'm hungry.
Be on watch
I
for
will
the
do
enemy!
what I must. Cannot we live in peace? Are there not better
A
things?
warrior
Be
has
on watch for
fallen.
the enemy! Be on watch for the enemy! Be on watch for the enemy!
I'm hungry.
Be on watch for the enemy!
Work.
Be on watch for the enemy! Be on watch for the enemy! on watch for the enemy! Be on watch for the enemy!
A warrior has fallen.
Be on watch for the enemy! Be on watch for the enemy! Be on watch for the enemy! Be on watch for the enemy!
A warrior has fallen.
We are upgrading to armor-piercing
Be on
bullets.
watch for the enemy! Be on watch for the enemy!
Do
Be
not
on watch
hurt
for the
me.
enemy! Be on watch for the enemy!
Anthrax made upgrade is here.
Be on watch
We
for
have
the
discovered
enemy!
an enemy black lotus.
Be on watch for the enemy! Be on watch for the enemy! Be on watch for the enemy!
I
A
will work.
warrior has fallen.
Be on watch for the enemy! 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 Be on watch
Our base is under attack!
Be on watch for the enemy!
The lot of work.
A warrior has fallen.
Be on watch for the enemy!
Are there not better
Be
tools?
on watch for the enemy! Be on watch for the enemy!
Cannot
Be on watch for the enemy! Be on watch for the
Do not
enemy!
hurt me. I do what I am
Be
told.
on watch for the enemy! Be on watch for the enemy!
A warrior
Be on
has
watch for
fallen.
the enemy! Be on watch for 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 the enemy!
I'm just a
Be on
peasant.
watch for the enemy! Be on watch for the enemy!
We have discovered
Be on
an
watch for
enemy
the enemy!
black lotus.
Be on
A
watch for the
warrior has
enemy!
fallen.
That building cannot fit
Be on
there.
watch for the enemy! Be on watch for the enemy! Be on watch for the enemy!
If that is what you want, I will obey.
Be on watch for the
I will
enemy!
try to hurry. Do not hurt me. Does it have to be so
Be on watch
far?
for the
I
enemy!
will do
Be
what
on
I
watch
must.
for the enemy! Be on watch for the enemy!
A warrior has fallen.
Be on watch for the enemy! 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 Be on watch
A
for
warrior
the
has
enemy!
fallen.
Be on watch for the enemy! 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 Be on watch
A
for the
warrior
enemy!
has fallen.
Be on watch for the enemy!
Yes,
Be on watch for the enemy! Be on
You
watch for
change
the
your
enemy!
mind often.
Be on watch for the enemy!
I will try to hurry.
Be on watch for the enemy! 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 Be on
A
watch for the
warrior has
enemy!
fallen.
Be on watch for the enemy! Be on watch for the enemy!
The lot
Be on
of
watch
work.
for the enemy! Be on watch 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 for the enemy!
A warrior has fallen.
Be on watch for the enemy! Be on watch for the
Jump
enemy!
repair
Be
upgrade
on watch
has
for
been
the enemy!
installed.
Be on watch for the
Do
enemy!
not hurt me.
Be on watch for the enemy! Be on watch for
Are there
the
not
enemy!
better
Be on watch for the enemy! Be on watch for the enemy!
A warrior has
Be
fallen.
on watch for the enemy! Be 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 on watch for the
Building
enemy!
construction
We
has
have
been
spotted a
completed.
Be on watch
nuclear
for the
missile
enemy.
silo.
Cannot we live in
Be on watch
peace?
for the enemy! Be on watch for the enemy! Be on watch for the enemy! Be on watch for the enemy!
A warrior has
Be on watch for
fallen.
the enemy!
Building
Be on watch for
construction
the
has
enemy.
been completed.
Be on watch for the enemy! Be on watch for the enemy! Be on watch for the enemy!
I will do
We
the
have
best I
discovered
can.
an enemy black lotus.
Be on watch for the
I
enemy!
am finished with the building.
Be on watch for the enemy! Be on watch for the enemy! Be on watch for the enemy! Be on
Do
watch
not
for the
hurt
enemy!
me. Ow! Okay,
Be on watch
okay, I
for the
will
enemy!
work. Cannot we live
Be
in
on watch
peace?
for the enemy. Be on watch for the
Building
enemy.
construction has
Be
been
on watch for the enemy.
Oh, okay,
Be
I
on
will
watch
work.
for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy.
This hammer is heavy.
Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy.
I'm just
Be
a
on watch for
peasant.
the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy.
A
Be on
warrior
watch
has
for the
fallen.
enemy. Be on watch for the 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 enemy.
I am
Be on watch
finished
for
with the
the enemy.
building.
Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Our land. Be on watch for the enemy. Be
Do
on
not
watch for
hurt
the
me.
enemy. Be on watch for the enemy.
We have discovered an enemy black
on watch for
lotus.
the enemy.
A warrior has fallen.
Be on watch for the enemy. 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 Be on watch for the enemy.
Yes.
A warrior
Be on
has
watch for
fallen.
the enemy.
What do you want to?
Be on watch for the enemy.
Are there not
Be
better
on watch for
tools?
the enemy.
Yes.
Our homes are in peril.
Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy.
A warrior has fallen.
Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy.
Cannot
We have
we
more
live in
Russian
peace?
enemy.
Does it have to be so far?
Be on watch for the
A
enemy.
warrior has fallen.
Be on watch for the enemy.
Do not hurt
Be
me.
on watch for the enemy.
I will try to hurry.
Be on watch for the
Okay, I
enemy.
will work. Building
Be on watch
construction
for
has
the
been
enemy.
completed.
Be on watch for the
We
enemy.
have discovered
work.
an enemy black lotus.
I'm just a peasant. Building construction has been
Be on watch for
I'm
the enemy.
hungry. I will
Be on
go.
watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy.
I will That is what you want. I will obey.
Be on watch for the enemy.
I will work.
Be on watch for the enemy.
A warrior has
I
fallen.
will do what I must. I'm hungry. I will work. is complete.
Be on watch for
I
the
will
enemy.
do the best I can.
Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the
Warrior
enemy.
has fallen.
Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy.
A warrior has fallen.
Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy.
A
Be on
warrior
watch
has
for the
fallen.
enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the
Building
enemy.
construction has been
Be on watch for the enemy.
Our base is in
Be on
peril.
watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy.
A warrior has fallen.
Be on watch for the enemy. 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 Be on watch for the enemy.
A
Be on watch
warrior
for
has
the enemy.
fallen.
Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy.
I'll puncture the next thing that moves.
Be on
We
watch
can
for
now
the
use
enemy.
our Scudstorm. Launching
Be on watch
Scudstorm.
for the enemy.
A warrior has
Be on
fallen.
watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy.
Camo netting has arrived. New camo netting has
Puncture the
arrived.
next thing that moves. The new camo netting has arrived. The enemy has arrived. Camo netting has arrived. The new camo netting has arrived. The new camo netting has arrived. Camo netting has
A
arrived.
warrior has
Building
fallen.
construction has been completed.
Puncture the next thing that moves.
We can now use our Scudstorm. Launching Scudstorm.
I'll puncture the next thing that moves. I'll puncture the next thing that moves.
A warrior has fallen.
I'll puncture the next thing that moves. I'll puncture the next thing that moves. I'll puncture the next thing that moves. I'll puncture the next thing.
A warrior has fallen.
Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy.
I'll puncture the next thing that moves. I'll puncture the next thing that moves.
Be on watch for the
A
enemy.
warrior has fallen.
Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy.
General, a nuclear missile has been
Be on watch
released.
for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy.
We can now use our Scudstorm.
Be on watch for the enemy.
under attack!
A warrior has
Be
fallen.
on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy.
Our giant cannon has
Guarding the
been
GLA
sealed by the
underground.
enemy.
Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy.
A warrior has fallen.
Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy.
I'll puncture the next
What
thing
do
that
you
A
want?
Be
warrior
on watch
has
for the
fallen.
enemy.
I'll puncture the
Be
next
on watch for the enemy.
I will work.
Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy.
A warrior has fallen. We have discovered an enemy Black
Be on
Lotus.
watch for the enemy.
I will work.
Be on watch
I
for the
will
enemy.
obey.
puncture the next thing.
That building cannot be there.
Be on watch
Do
for
what
the
I must.
enemy.
Oh, okay, I will work.
Be on watch for the enemy.
I will do the best I can. I'm just a peasant.
A warrior has fallen. We can now use our
Be on
Scudstorm.
watch for the enemy. Preserve it. Be on watch for the enemy.
What do you
Be on
want?
watch for the enemy.
A warrior has fallen.
That is not just a peasant.
Puncture the next thing.
A lot of
Be on watch for
hammer.
the enemy.
Yes.
Be on watch for the enemy.
Are there not better? What do you want me to do? I will do the best I can.
Puncture the next thing.
Be on
A
watch for the
warrior
enemy.
has fallen.
Building
Be on
construction
watch
has
for
been
the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy.
a lot of work.
Puncture the next thing.
Be on watch for the enemy.
A
Be on
warrior
watch for
has
the enemy.
fallen.
Be on watch for the enemy.
I'll
Be on
puncture
watch
the
for
next
the
thing that
enemy.
moves.
Launching Scudstorm.
Be on watch
A
for the
warrior
enemy.
has fallen.
Be on watch for the enemy.
I'll puncture the next thing that moves.
Be on watch for the enemy.
We can now use our Scudstorm.
I'll puncture the next thing that
A
moves.
warrior has fallen.
Be on watch for the enemy. 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 Be on watch
A
for the
warrior
enemy.
has fallen.
Cannot we live in
Puncture the
peace?
next thing that moves.
Ow! Okay, I will work.
Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Guarding the GLA underground. Be on watch for the enemy.
I will obey.
A warrior has fallen.
Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy.
We can now use our Scudstorm.
Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch
A
for the
warrior
enemy.
has fallen.
Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Bring the GLA underground.
A warrior has fallen.
The enemy.
I'm just a peasant.
Be on watch for the
We
enemy.
can now use our Scudstorm.
Our land must be
A
preserved.
warrior has
Watch your
fallen.
step. Over there. Watch your step.
Ow! Okay, I will work. This is hard work. That is a lot of work.
Be on watch for the enemy.
A warrior has fallen. Launching Scudstorm.
Be on watch for the
Construction
enemy.
has been completed.
Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy.
A warrior has fallen. Our Jarman Kelp has been seen by the enemy.
Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy.
A warrior has fallen.
Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy.
Launching
Be on watch
Scudstorm.
for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch
A
for the
warrior
enemy.
has fallen.
Be on watch for the enemy. 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 Be on watch for the enemy.
Our base is under attack!
The enemy. Be on watch for 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 the enemy.
A warrior has fallen.
Be on watch for the enemy. 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 Be on watch for the
I will obey.
enemy. Be on watch for
There's
the
not
enemy.
enough room for that building.
A warrior has
Be on watch
fallen.
for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy.
Ow!
Be on watch
Okay,
for the
okay,
enemy.
I will work.
Be on watch
This
for the
hammer
enemy.
is heavy.
Be on watch for the enemy. 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 Be on watch for the enemy.
A warrior has
Be on
fallen.
watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy.
I'll puncture the next thing that moves.
Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy.
A warrior has
Be on
fallen.
watch for the enemy.
I'll puncture the next thing that moves.
Cannot we live in
Be
peace?
on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy.
The next thing that moves.
Be on watch for the enemy. Watch for the enemy. Be on 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 watch for the enemy. For the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy.
A warrior has fallen.
Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. For the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch
We
for the
can now
enemy.
use
Be
our
on watch for
Scudstorm.
the enemy.
Launching Scudstorm. A warrior has fallen.
Be on watch for the enemy.
I'll puncture the
Be on
next
watch
thing
for
that
the enemy. Be on watch for 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 the enemy. Be on watch
has
enemy.
fallen.
Be on watch for the enemy.
I'll puncture the next thing that moves.
Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. For the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy.
I'll puncture the next thing that moves.
What do you want?
Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy.
A warrior has fallen.
Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. For the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy.
The next thing that moves.
Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. For the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy.
A warrior has fallen.
Be on watch for the enemy. 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 The enemy.
A warrior has fallen.
Be on watch for the enemy. 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 Be on watch for the enemy.
Cannot we live
Be
in
on watch for
peace?
the enemy. Be on watch for
Are there
the
not
enemy. Be
better
on watch
tools?
for the enemy.
I'll puncture the next thing
Be on
that
watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the
A
enemy.
warrior has fallen.
Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. The enemy.
We can now use our Scudstorm. Launching Scudstorm.
Be on watch
I'm
for
just
the
a
enemy.
peasant.
Be on watch for the enemy.
I'll puncture the next thing that
Be
moves.
on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. The
I'll
enemy.
puncture the next thing that moves.
A warrior has
Be on
fallen.
watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. On watch for the enemy. The enemy.
I'll puncture the next thing that moves.
Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. On watch. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy.
We can now
Be on
use
watch
our
for the enemy.
Scudstorm.
Be on watch for the
A
enemy.
warrior has fallen.
Be on watch for the enemy. 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 For the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy.
Launching Scudstorm.
Be on watch for the enemy. On watch. Be on watch for the enemy.
I'll puncture the next
Be on
thing.
watch for
warrior
the
has
enemy.
fallen.
Be on watch for the enemy.
Puncture the next thing that moves.
Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. For the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy.
I'll puncture the next
Be on
thing.
watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. For the enemy.
I'll puncture
A
the next
warrior
thing.
has fallen.
Be on watch for the enemy. 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 For the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for
Warrior has
the
fallen.
enemy. Be on watch for the 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 enemy.
A warrior has fallen.
I'll puncture the next thing that moves.
Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy.
I'll puncture the
Be
next
on
thing
watch
that
for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy.
moves. Puncture the next thing that
Be
moves.
on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for
A
the enemy.
warrior
For the
has
enemy.
fallen.
Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy.
I'll puncture the next thing that moves.
Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy.
A warrior has fallen.
Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy.
I'll puncture the next thing that moves.
has arrived. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy.
The new camo
Be on watch
netting
for
has
the
arrived.
enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch
Do
for
not
the
hurt
enemy.
me.
Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Be Be on watch
I
for
will
the
try
enemy.
to hide.
Be on
We
watch
can
for
now
the enemy.
use our scud storm.
The tunnels
A
will be on
warrior
watch for
has
the enemy.
fallen.
Be on watch for the enemy.
I'll puncture the next thing that
Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Guarding the GLA underground. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy.
Launching scud storm.
Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy.
I'll puncture the next thing
Be
that
on watch for the enemy.
A
Be on watch
warrior
for the
has
enemy.
fallen. Upgrade complete.
I'll puncture the next thing that moves.
The new camo level has
A warrior
arrived.
has fallen.
I'll puncture the next thing that moves. I'll puncture the next thing that moves. I'll puncture the next thing that moves. I'll puncture the next thing that moves.
A warrior has fallen.
I'll puncture the next thing that moves. I'll puncture the next thing that moves.
I will obey. I do what I am told.
A warrior
Does it
has
have to be
fallen.
so far? I will work.
I'll puncture the next thing that moves. I'll puncture the next thing that moves.
I will work. I will work.
I'll puncture the next thing that moves.
Be on watch for
Oh,
the enemy.
okay,
Be on
okay,
watch
I
for
will
the
work.
enemy. Be on
A
watch for
warrior
the
has
enemy.
fallen.
I will do the
Be on
best I
watch for
can.
the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for
We
the
can
enemy.
now use
Be
our
on
scud
watch for
storm.
the enemy.
I'll
Be on
puncture
watch
the
for
next
the enemy.
Construction has been completed.
Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the
Our
enemy.
homes
Be on
are
watch
in
for the
peril.
enemy.
A
Be on
warrior
watch
has
for the
fallen.
enemy.
Launching
Be on watch
scud
for the
storm.
enemy. Be on watch for the enemy.
I'll puncture the next thing that
Be on watch for the enemy. 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 Be on watch
A
for the
warrior
enemy.
has fallen.
I'll puncture the
Be on
next
watch for the enemy. Be on 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 watch for the enemy.
I'll puncture
Be
the
on
next
watch
thing
for
that
the
I'm
enemy.
hungry.
A
Be
warrior
on
has
watch for the
fallen.
enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy.
We can now use our
watch
scud
for the
storm.
enemy.
Launching scud storm.
Be on watch for the
I will
enemy.
obey.
Be on watch for the enemy.
I
Be on
will
watch
work.
for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy.
A
Be on watch
warrior
for
has
the enemy.
fallen.
Be on watch for the enemy.
I'll puncture the next thing that
Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy.
I'm just a peasant.
A warrior has fallen.
I'll puncture the next thing that moves. I'll puncture the next thing that moves.
Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the
A
enemy.
warrior has fallen.
Be
I'm
on watch for
hungry.
the enemy.
Are there not better tools?
Be on watch for the
Yes,
enemy.
I will
Be
do
on
it.
watch for the
We
enemy.
can now use our
Be on
scud
watch for
storm.
the enemy.
A warrior has fallen.
Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy.
Launching scud storm.
Puncture the next thing that moves.
Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy.
I'll puncture the
will
next
work.
thing that
A
moves.
A warrior has
Be on
fallen.
watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy.
Yes, yes.
I will work.
I do not have patience for this.
Be on watch for
Start
the
the
enemy.
machinery.
Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy.
A warrior has fallen.
Be on watch for the enemy. 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 Be on watch for the enemy.
A warrior has
Be on
fallen.
watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy.
We can now use our Scudstorm. A warrior has fallen.
Be on watch for the enemy.
Launching Scudstorm.
Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch
I
for
am
the enemy.
finished with the building.
A warrior has fallen.
The enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy.
Quad cannon.
Be on watch for the enemy. I sense danger. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy.
A warrior has
Don't
fallen.
get on my bad side. Begin stitching.
Launching Scudstorm.
Be on watch for the enemy. 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 The tunnels will protect us.
Do not hurt me.
A warrior
I
has
will obey.
fallen.
Be on watch for the enemy.
Already needs repairs.
Be on watch for the enemy.
I'm just a
A
peasant.
warrior has fallen.
Ow! Okay,
Be on watch
I
for
will
the
work.
enemy.
I will do the best I can.
Be on watch
A
for the
warrior
enemy.
has fallen. We can now use our Scudstorm.
Be on watch for the enemy. Must be preserved.
I'm
A
just a
warrior has
peasant.
fallen.
What do you want? It already needs
Be on
repairs.
watch for the
Cannot
enemy.
we live in peace?
Be on watch for the enemy.
Ow! Okay, I will work. Starting repairs. I will work.
Be on watch for the enemy.
A warrior has
Be on watch
fallen.
for the enemy.
Launching Scudstorm. We can now use our Scudstorm.
Be on watch for the enemy.
I'll puncture the next thing that moves.
A warrior has fallen.
Be on watch for the enemy.
I'll
Be on watch for the enemy.
We can now use our Scudstorm. Launching
Be
Scudstorm.
on watch for the
A
enemy.
warrior has fallen.
I will obey. Are there not better tools?
A warrior has fallen.
puncture the next thing that moves.
A warrior has fallen. We can
Be on
now
watch for
use
the
our
enemy.
Scudstorm.
Finished with the
I'll
Be
building.
on watch for the enemy.
Ow! Okay, I will
The
work.
next thing that moves.
Do not hurt me.
Be on watch for
You
the enemy.
change your mind
Be on
often.
watch for the enemy.
A warrior has fallen.
Be on watch for the enemy. Be watch for the enemy. I'm alone.
I'll puncture
Be
the
on
next
watch
thing
for
that
the
moves.
enemy. Be on watch for the enemy.
I'll puncture the next thing that moves.
Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy.
A warrior
the
has
next thing that
fallen.
moves.
Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy.
I'll puncture the next thing that moves.
Be on watch
I'll
for the
puncture the
enemy.
next thing that moves.
A warrior has
I'm
fallen.
just a peasant. What do you want me to do?
Be on
I
watch
will
for
try.
the
I'm
enemy.
just a peasant. Are there
puncture
not
the next
better
thing that
tools?
Be on watch for the enemy.
We can now use our scud storm.
I'll puncture the next thing that moves.
Launching scud
Puncture
storm.
the next thing that moves. I'll puncture the next thing that moves. I'll puncture the next thing that moves.
A warrior has fallen.
I'll puncture the next thing that
We
moves.
can now use our scud storm.
I'll puncture the next thing that moves.
That was a
Launching
lot of
scud
work.
storm. A warrior has fallen.
The new camo netting has arrived. The new
A
camo netting
warrior
has
has
arrived.
fallen.
I'll puncture the next thing that moves.
Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the
A
enemy.
warrior has fallen.
Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the
I'll
enemy.
puncture the next thing that moves.
Be on watch for
Building
the enemy.
construction has been
Be
completed.
on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Be
Building
on watch for the
construction has
enemy.
been completed.
Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch
I'll
for the
puncture the
enemy.
next thing that moves.
We
I'll
can
puncture
now
the
Be on
use
watch
our
for the
scud
enemy.
storm.
Be on watch for the
Launching
enemy.
scud
Be
storm.
on watch for the enemy.
Our
Be on
base
watch
is in
for the
peril.
enemy. Be on watch for the 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 enemy.
Puncture the next thing that moves.
Be on watch for the enemy. 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 Be on watch for the enemy.
General, our land is being attacked.
Be on
We
watch for
can
the
now
enemy.
use our scud storm.
Be
Launching
on watch
scud
for
storm.
the enemy.
A
Be on
warrior
watch for
has
the enemy.
fallen.
Be on watch for the enemy.
underground.
Be on watch for the enemy.
Try my chances.
Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy.
Change your mind.
Be on watch for the enemy.
A warrior has fallen.
The tunnels will be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy. Be on watch for the enemy.
I'm not dead.
I sense danger in the near. Guarding the GLA underground.
A warrior has fallen.
I will go. Does it have to be so far?
Must be preserved.
I'll puncture the next
Stay
thing.
close to safety.
Puncture the next thing that moves.
We can now use our scud storm. Launching scud storm.
Quick, ready yourselves.
I'm just a peasant.
The new
I
camo
will try
netting
to
has
hide. I
arrived.
will obey. If that is what you
I'll
want.
puncture the next thing
Our
that
land
moves. I'll
must be
puncture the
preserved.
next thing that moves.
Defend our homes! Shh! I sense danger very near.
Warrior has fallen.
The enemy may be near. Defend our homes! There they are! The tunnels will protect us. Quick, ready yourselves.
What? They will break and shatter.
A warrior has fallen.
Yes, yes. Going. Punch it.
The tunnels will protect us. Overtake them! Stay close to safety. Attack before they attack us.
Puncture the next thing that
We
moves.
must be
I'll
careful.
Puncture the next thing that moves.
We can now use our Scudstorm. Launching Scudstorm.
I'll puncture the next thing that moves. I'll puncture the next thing that moves.
A warrior has fallen.
Guarding the GLA underground.
I'll puncture the next thing that moves. I'll
Okay,
puncture
over
the
there.
next thing that
The tunnels will protect us.
moves. What?
We can now use our
I'll puncture
Scudstorm.
the next thing that moves. I'll puncture the next thing that
Quick,
moves.
ready yourselves.
A warrior has fallen. Launching Scudstorm.
I'll puncture the next thing that moves. I'll puncture the next thing that moves. I'll puncture the next thing that moves.
That was a lot of work. I am finished with the building.
The new camo netting has arrived. The new camo guarding the GLA underground. Okay, over there.
A warrior has fallen. Launching Scudstorm. A warrior has fallen. We can now use our Scudstorm. Launching Scudstorm. A warrior has fallen.
Ready yourselves. Get them! Get them now! There they are!
A warrior has fallen.
The tunnels will protect us. The land
I will
must
go.
be preserved.
Does it have to be so far?
We can now use our Scudstorm. Launching Scudstorm. A warrior has fallen.
What? They will break and shatter. Punch it. Quad cannon. Four on the floor. Stop them dead in their tracks. Quad cannon. Don't push me. Yes, yes. Don't push me.
We can now use our Scudstorm.
What? Don't push me. Yes, yes. I do not have patience for this. Don't get on my bad side. I'll puncture the next thing that moves. I'll puncture the next thing that moves.
Launching Scudstorm. A warrior has fallen.
Quad cannon. Yes, yes. I'll puncture the next thing that What? I'll puncture the next thing that moves. Don't get on my bad side. Quad cannon. Don't push me.
Guarding the
I'll
GLA
puncture the
underground.
next thing. Huh? Going. Punch it.
Land must be preserved. Guarding the GLA underground. Shh! I sense danger may be near.
I'll puncture the next thing on my bad side. Puncture the next thing that moves. What? Yes, yes. Begin stitching. Don't push me. Yes, yes. I'll puncture the next thing that moves.
Launching Scudstorm. A warrior has fallen.
4 on the floor. Going. They are brittle. I'll puncture the next thing that moves. I'll puncture the next thing that moves.
Quick! Ready
A
yourself!
warrior
Don't let
has
them get away!
fallen. We can now use our Scudstorm.
I'll puncture the next thing that moves.
Launching Scudstorm.
Huh? I'll
Going.
puncture the next thing that moves. Going. Don't push me. Yes, yes. I'll puncture the next thing that moves. What?
We can now use our Scudstorm. Launching Scudstorm.
Don't get on my bad side. Start the machinery. What? I'll get there. Quad cannon. Don't get on my bad side. Quad cannon.
A warrior has fallen.
The tunnels will protect us.
We can now use our Scudstorm. A warrior has fallen.
Don't get on my bad side. Don't push me. They are brittle. Yes, yes. What? Don't get on my bad side. Going. Yes, yes. What? Begin
We can
stitching.
now use our Scudstorm.
Quad cannon. Yes, yes.
A warrior has fallen. Launching
4 on the
Scudstorm.
floor. Yes, yes. They are brittle. Don't get on my bad side.
A warrior has fallen.
What? Yes, yes. I do not have patience for this.
We can now use our Scudstorm. Launching Scudstorm.
What? Stop them dead in their tracks. Huh? Yes, yes. I do not have patience for this. Yes, yes.
Launching Scudstorm.
Going. Quad cannon.
We can now use our Scudstorm.
Don't get on my bad side. Don't push me. I'll get there. Don't push me.
I'm hungry.
Quick! Ready yourself! The enemy may be near! Our land must be preserved!
What do you want with me? What is in there? I will obey. Cannot we live in peace? Yes.
We are victorious.